The Stanley Hotel, USA. The Haunting of Room 217, A Tale of the Stanley Hotel. The sun was setting behind the jagged peaks of the Colorado Rockies, casting long shadows over the sprawling grounds of the Stanley Hotel. High up in Estes Park, the century-old hotel stood like a grand monument of history and mystery. Its white facade gleamed against the darkening sky, a beacon for travelers seeking luxury, or perhaps something more chilling. For the Stanley Hotel wasn't just any place to stay, it was a place where the supernatural seemed as much a part of the structure as its brick and mortar. Evelyn Fisher stepped out of her car, looking up at the towering building. She had heard the stories, of course. Everyone had. From Stephen King's inspiration for The Shining to the countless tales of ghostly encounters, the Stanley Hotel had become a place of legend. But Evelyn wasn't here for the thrill of a ghost hunt. She was here for solitude. After months of grueling work at her law firm, she needed a break. She needed quiet. And despite its infamous reputation, the Stanley seemed the perfect place to unwind. As she entered the grand lobby, a wave of nostalgia washed over her. The hotel had been impeccably restored, its 1909 charm maintained in every detail, the ornate chandeliers, the rich wood paneling, the grand piano that sat in the corner, waiting for someone brave enough to play. A friendly receptionist handed her a key with a smile that seemed to know more than it let on. Room 217, the receptionist said, her voice almost too cheerful. Evelyn nodded, barely registering the significance of the number. To her, it was just a room. A place to rest. Little did she know that Room 217 held a history of its own, one that would soon become all too real. When she entered her room, Evelyn was pleased to find it spacious and tastefully decorated in a vintage style. A four-poster bed with crisp white linens dominated the room, while an antique dresser stood against the far wall, a large mirror hanging above it. She tossed her suitcase onto the bed and wandered over to the window. The view was breathtaking. The mountains loomed in the distance, their snow-capped peaks reflecting the last rays of the setting sun. Exhausted, Evelyn decided to freshen up before dinner. The bathroom, like the rest of the hotel, had been beautifully restored, with its clawfoot tub and gleaming fixtures. She filled the tub with steaming water, eager to soak away the tension of the past months. As she lay in the water, her eyes closed, she heard a soft rustling sound. She opened her eyes, listening intently, but the room was silent. Shaking her head, she dismissed it as her imagination. After all, she had been on edge for weeks. Later that night, Evelyn sat at the desk in her room, flipping through a magazine. The quiet of the hotel was comforting, a welcome change from the constant noise of her city apartment. But then she heard it again, a soft rustle, this time closer, like someone moving just behind her. She spun around, but the room was empty. Her eyes landed on the mirror above the dresser, and for a split second, she thought she saw something, a faint shadow, a movement just out of sight. She blinked, and it was gone. "You're just tired," she muttered to herself, trying to shake off the creeping unease. But the air in the room felt different now, heavier. The shadows seemed to stretch farther, the silence thicker. As the night wore on, strange things began to happen. The lamp by the bedside flickered intermittently, though there was no storm outside. The temperature in the room dropped suddenly, and Evelyn found herself shivering under the heavy blankets. And then, at exactly 2:17 a.m., she heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing the hallway outside her door. Evelyn held her breath, listening as the footsteps grew louder, closer. They stopped right outside her room. Her heart raced. She waited, expecting to hear a knock, but there was only silence. Gathering her courage, she crept to the door and peeked through the peephole. No one was there. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she backed away from the door. Suddenly, the mirror on the dresser rattled violently, as though someone had struck it from the other side. Evelyn gasped, stumbling back onto the bed. And then, the figure appeared, a woman, translucent and glowing, standing at the foot of the bed. Her face was sorrowful, her eyes filled with a sadness that spanned centuries. Evelyn froze, unable to move, her mind racing to comprehend what she was seeing. The woman opened her mouth as if to speak, but no sound came. She reached out a hand toward Evelyn, her ghostly fingers brushing the air, and then, just as suddenly as she had appeared, she was gone. For the rest of the night, Evelyn sat wide-eyed in the corner of the room, the memory of the ghostly woman etched into her mind forever. The Stanley Hotel had given her no peace, only a story she would never forget. Room 217 had lived up to its legend.